One of the things I love most about hosting close-up television and radio is the opportunity to travel across the country and around the world, discovering and meeting extraordinary people who are doing incredible things to make our world a better place. And one of those folks is Patricia Blake. Matter of fact, we're here at her home in Yerington, Nevada, which is about an hour and a half south of Reno. It's a beautiful ranch, 16 acres. She has horses here, she has dogs. It's really a warm and comfortable place. But she's got an extraordinary story, a life-changing story she's going to share with us about a miracle that happened in her life early on. As a matter of fact, she details it in this book. She has spent about 33 years as a Los Angeles police officer, as a lieutenant as well. The book is touched by the hand of God, and it recounts some extraordinary stories of her time on the police force, things that will inspire and influence you in incredible ways. It has me as I've read the book, and you're going to want to definitely pick up a copy of it. But also she is very open and revealing about her own life, the time on the force, but also just living the daily experience. So we've come here to Yerington, Nevada to not only have an opportunity to sit down and chat and learn more about Patricia, but experience everything this area has to offer. And we're also going to have an opportunity to meet the horses too, which I'm very excited about. I'm Jim Masters. This is Close Up Television and Radio. It's time now here in Yerington, Nevada to meet with Patricia Blake. Patricia, this continues to be an extraordinary day, and thanks for welcoming us to your incredible home here in Nevada and Yerington. I said it's so warm and comfortable. You know, when you look around the inside, you really have a true love for animals, don't you?
Oh, and they're in my heart. But yeah. I have to say, today was incredibly fun and delightful. I had a great time. And with our wonderful camera person.
Everybody. It takes a village, it takes a team.
And my wonderful horse.
Yes, Mocha. Well, all of them, I tell you. Yeah, we got
the
a chance
whole herd. Oh, and the burro with the big furry ears.
Yes. Absolutely. Patricia, I'd love to find out what inspired you initially to go into law enforcement. Does it go back to something maybe in your childhood?
I was the oldest of 4 children. And I was expected by my parents to guard and watch over my brother and sisters. Like one time, my middle sister, she fell off of, well, it's not funny, but she fell off of the hood of the car because my brother was dangling an earthworm in front of her, and she overreacted and like screamed and fell off. Broke her arm, and I wasn't even there. And my father goes, "Why did you let your sister break her arm?" And you don't talk back to your parents. So I didn't say, I wasn't even there. But as I got older, I had a strong sense of justice and to protect.
Let's talk about your extraordinary experience. You've had so many things in your life that have been really, really breathtaking and also life-changing as well. There are a few stories. I know you wanted to share with us one particular story that you have described as life-changing and almost a miracle. Tell us about that.
As a teenager, I wasn't sure what I was going to do as an occupation, and I married pretty young. I mean, I was 18 or 19, and it was not meant to be the marriage. And I was only married 4 months, and I was struggling, and it was very traumatic with my first husband had been in Vietnam and 2 tours in Vietnam. He was extremely depressed. He had PTSD, but back then it was not treated or diagnosed.
Right. Yeah.
No, and he was an alcoholic, and he was abusive, and so I was planning to divorce, and I came home from my parents' house actually from talking with them about this is what I need to do to protect myself. And I came into the house. He had a rifle, and he was in the bedroom. I decided to go into the bathroom and take a shower to give him time to calm down. unfortunately, he chose suicide with the rifle. And I was pretty innocent and naive at the time. And after the trauma of thinking that he was going to break in the bathroom door and shoot me, I realized I need to go in, and it had been maybe a couple of minutes or longer. Time stands still.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, and so when I entered the bedroom, there was a mist of blood and other body material in the air, and I didn't see him at first, but I knew that something horrible had happened, and he was laying on the other side of the bed on the floor, and he had killed himself. So
that's dramatic. That's, yeah.
Well, you feel guilt and you question what you should have done differently, and my mind was plunging. So my parents, after the police interview, they picked me up and they were taking me home, and they were in the front, I was in the back seat. And I call this a life-changing, it was a spiritual experience, and I can only describe it as a higher power that I was in the back seat in the dark, and I felt on my right shoulder the weight of a hand. I could feel a distinctive hand, and to me, I have to say it was like a man's hand, but I don't know if the presence that touched me was God or Jesus or an angel, but instantaneously the grief and the pain and the horror was removed and filled with a higher power of love and grace and peace. It's an indescribable peace. It's surreal. It's not of this world. And it was so powerful, this experience. I call it a miracle, but I never talked about it for 40 years, even when I was on the job. But it carried with me this reassurance that there are angels watching over me. And I believe it was a calling to come on, to go into law enforcement, because I had this strong urgency to protect and to make a difference, especially with the children, the innocent and the vulnerable. So that carried with me throughout my whole career. But looking back on my career and different incidences that I handled and lived through, I realize that there are no coincidences and that there are angels that are watching. God sends angels to watch over all first responders, medical, fire, law enforcement, military. God bless our military soldiers. And it's just in my heart that it's a calling.
That's an amazing way to be led into the understanding and appreciation of why you do what you do, and you do so well. Such a dramatic experience like that to sort of propel you to do work that I think you probably were born to do anyway, that was, even when you were a kid, were already destined to do. And this dramatic experience sort of pushed you into that direction, which is a phenomenal thing. So what was that process like? Okay, you have a dramatic scenario like this happen before your eyes.
A life-changing
miracle. Take us from there. How did you take an experience like that, and what was the procedure like? What was the process like to then obviously get into the world of law enforcement? Obviously there's the training and learning all the protocol and everything. Tell us about some of that.
Well, when I made the decision to go into law enforcement, it was 1983 with Los Angeles Police Department. At that time, I knew it was going to be challenging because there were very few females that worked patrol in the field. In fact, up until 1981, females were not, there was two classifications. There was, the badge said policewoman, or it said policeman. After this class action lawsuit initiated by Patricia Blake, no relation, but she broke the glass ceiling. She changed everything for women and minorities coming on the job. and made it equal and fair. And so I came on when there was very few females that wanted to do the job. But for me, it was so incredibly challenging, and I looked forward to doing the right thing every day and making a difference. And I've been blessed with incredible true partners that backed me, worked with me, trusted me to back them. And it's very rewarding.
No, I can only imagine. It's a situation where you, again, were on the forefront, one of the leaders and one of the first, women to be on the force. So you are a role model for many, but especially women too, in a beautiful way.
Well, and I did write a book about, as a testimony to all these different incredible things in my life that showed me that you can overcome incredible adversity, and in your darkest moments, if you have hope and faith, you can truly move forward and be strong and have courage and stand up. And I think that's just amazing to share with everyone.
Right, exactly.
And I do have to say, I want to give credit to all the women that came before me, all my sisters in blue.
Sure, yeah.
That built that foundation, that path, including Fanshawe Blake, who had the courage and the strength to stand up against injustice.
Absolutely.
It was a different pay scale. They couldn't promote past sergeant and the different categories. And now it's all one category.
It's all one category.
Police officer, the badge says police officer. Yeah.
So when you joined the force, obviously you went through all the extensive training and everything that's required, but when you're actually you're on the beat, what was one of the first assignments that you had? Do you remember one of the first things you had to do when you're now officially an officer?
After my probation in Foothill, and I just was like, I wanted to absorb all the tactics, all the position of advantage, the mental advantage for an officer to learn, and to learn from my training officers, but also take advantage to every training opportunity that was offered to me to develop and grow and improve, and in a safe manner and tactical way, for not just myself, but for the community that I protected, tried to protect, and for my partners. So I ended up in Rampart Division, and I worked there. That's where I learned my tactical skills and broadcasting and setting up perimeters, and just an incredible time in the 80s for learning and being in law enforcement. And if I could just describe a few experiences that will be with me forever.
Absolutely.
that I handled.
Yeah.
So I had one partner, John Vasquez. He's in the book, his picture with his sister playing cops and robbers. So John Vasquez and I, the first day we worked together, it's kind of funny that this is hopefully a quick story. So he's driving, and he's got seniority. I'm like 1 year out, kind of a rookie, but and I can type 120 words a minute. And we had a computer terminal in the middle console that I could get feedback for stolen cars. And in Rampart at that time, there was over 300 Toyotas and Hondas stolen every month. So what are the chances of you run a Honda or Toyota? I ran this one car with 2 gang members in it. They were going the opposite direction, and I said, turn around and go the other direction. That black Honda's stolen. He looks at me and he goes, are you sure? And I'm like, I'm pretty darn sure. And it was on a swivel, and I threw the computer into his knee, and I said, yeah, I'm pretty sure. So we got the gang members, hooked them up, recovered the car, and then afterwards I said, so I just have to ask you, why did you ask me, are you sure? And he said, well, the day before, he had worked with a female, and she told him that car's stolen. It was a lost or stolen plate. So I'm like, okay, I get it, not a problem.
Right.
So John became one of my closest partners. We trusted each other. We got a couple of months later, we got a radio call of multiple shots fired in an apartment on the second floor. You know that's a good call if it's multiple persons calling in. So we were primary on the call, talked to the neighbors, learned there was a husband and wife and a baby boy about 8 months old inside the apartment. So John and I made a plan for entry. I was going to go to the left and lock it down. He was going to go to the right. Well, when we kicked the door, it only opened about that much, about 6 inches. And I was a little smaller at that time, like 115 pounds. And I had this sense of urgency, partly because of my past incident.
Sure, yeah.
And the intensity of that, I had to get in there. And I told my partner, if I take my gun belt off and I have my gun with me, I can get in there. I can try to get that door open for you guys. And he goes, you're not going in there without me. And that solidified our partnership forever, for life.
Yeah.
And he took his gun belt and left it with the guys, the backup. I left mine. And we locked down the front, and there was a large wooden armoire, heavy piece of furniture that somebody had deliberately placed in front of the door so that we couldn't get in. We were able to move it just enough so the backup officers came in with us to help clear. It's a high priority call and critical when there's shots fired. And so we cleared every room down a hallway, and the master bedroom was the last room. And it was so eerie to me because, and my partner and I have talked about this, I mean, even now that we've retired, we're still in touch. It was so horrible that we didn't hear any noise from any family member, including the baby. And so we have this intense feeling of dread as we enter the last room. And what we find is the husband had shot his wife in the head with a gun and shot himself. And I'm trying to get the baby, to see if the baby's alive or not. And I picked the baby up. He was laying on his back, covered in blood, looking at the ceiling, not moving, frozen, absolutely frozen. All I could do was pick him up and hold him to my heart, over my vest, over my badge, and just try to comfort him and let him know that he's safe, he's okay now. Ironically, and this is one reason I chose this story to talk about 2 years later, I got a routine radio call. It was a neighbor dispute or something. So I met the woman, the person that called in, and she started talking about, the only time I've ever talked to the police before or had to call them is when I found out that my sister had been shot and killed by her husband, and they had the baby, she had the baby, and I ended up raising the baby. When you're in the moment as an officer, you have to do your job. And I didn't want to upset her or show any emotion, but the only words I could say was, I was there. Yeah. I was there. I didn't tell her about picking the baby up or anything. But I believe that was not a coincidence. God put me there in that moment to let me know and reassure me that baby is in a safe place with a happy, healthy home with his mom's sister. So that was
still impacts you today, doesn't it?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Still, no need to apologize for being emotional. It's something that is really near and dear to you, and you still hold that with you today.
It's going to stay with me forever in my heart. Yeah. And that was a good ending for this little baby.
Right.
It would have been devastating. How hard would it be? We're human and we have emotions, but we can't show them. But to find that baby dead, shot by evil, I mean, you can only call it evil.
Yeah.
There's good and there's evil in this world.
I would imagine there's many similar stories that, you hold deep into your heart. What's great about this, the fact that you do, is that you're actually sharing it with us. This isn't something, that would normally come easy for anybody to just open up and share these stories. And you do that in this extraordinary book. You share these stories, including your own personal journey as well.
Well, I had not talked to even my family or friends or anyone on the job about that life-changing experience. And I am very spiritual, but you don't talk about religion at work. But God called me and had a plan for me for a reason, to make a difference. And it was very difficult to put the words down in writing, because what happens is, with each of these incidents, you relive them and the emotion. And at the time that you're in real life living it and handling it, you don't have time for emotion in law enforcement. It's a fluid situation. It's kind of a thinking game, and bringing in what resources do I need for this given situation. So you have to handle it and lock down the evidence for crime scenes, and handle arresting the bad guy if you have to, and basically you don't have time to show emotion, and you can't show emotion sometimes because you don't want to upset the witnesses, the family members, and that kind of thing. I relived every incident, every word of every incident, and when I talk about it now, I do get emotional, because I allow myself to and
feel it. Yeah.
But it was very hard to go back and edit and re-edit the book, and I wanted it to be meaningful. But to answer your question, I believe that God wanted me to put it on paper, because I hadn't talked about it for 40 years, and I'm not putting God and recognizing what He did in my life, and how He guided me, and the path that He wanted me to take. He did have a plan for me, and so. But the book itself, I also wanted people to know and recognize, hopefully give them hope and faith that there is a higher presence, whatever you would call it, that is there for you to protect you. If you call it God, or whatever you might believe in.
Divine,
A divine, a higher presence. So I felt that this would give people hope and faith, that when they needed help and in their desperation, there is that power of love and that sends angels to protect us. And that ties into my belief that there are angels, that God sends angels for first responders, the military, law enforcement, fire, medical, and all the other services where people are willing to help a total stranger. In law enforcement, I'm hoping that the book will allow people to recognize that law enforcement and their families, that they have insight, that they care. For the majority of officers are there for the right reason, to help. And my partners, I worked several specialized units. All these officers, they wanted to protect the innocent and the vulnerable. It was a calling for them. And they want to do the right thing. And sometimes we are human and we do the wrong thing. But for the most part, they just want to be there to protect.
What would be maybe one thing that would be a myth or a misconception, you think, about the role of law enforcement, the work that you and your colleagues do in putting yourselves on the line and out there taking the risk to keep all of us safe and to protect us? What are some things, misconceptions, things that you think people really should know?
I believe that God sends angels to watch over our first responders. And there's a quote in the Old Testament, Isaiah, the Old Testament prophet, who is highly respected. And in verse 6-8, the Lord says, whom should I send? And he was referring to tell terrible news to Isaiah's people. Isaiah's response was, send me. It was very simple. Yeah. Send me. I connect with that on a very strong level for some reason. I believe that the Lord sends first responders as angels in the moment, those dark moments in time when people in desperation need help, like the 9/11 World Trade Centers. Yeah. There was no hesitation. Those firemen turned around and went back in knowing that the first building collapsed, knowing that the second building would collapse, and tried to rescue people. Yeah. That was everyone's darkest moment.
One of the other things that's really fascinating to me, Patricia, is this beautiful property you have here. There's 16 acres filled with nature and love and the wonderful horses and the dogs, and we've had an opportunity to meet them all today. It's truly absolutely special. Let's talk about them and the importance of having them around you as well, because they can be very, very healing.
I've been blessed to have horses and dogs for like almost 30 years, and different dogs, of course. And the horses can live to the age of 40 or 45. It's kind of my comfort and my sanctuary and my trust that, we trust each other. It's a comfort. And I enjoy taking care of my horses and dogs. And of course, they all have different personalities. Sure. Yeah. They're like kids. They have different personalities. And, but they rely on us to be there for them and protect them also, honestly. So it's give and take. I mean, it's reassuring to me just to brush my horse or pet my horse or talk to my dog and work with my dog to teach him a new trick like shake or sit. But we're there for each other.
And in society, they serve such an incredibly important purpose, right? I mean, they're used oftentimes for a lot of very important roles.
The dogs with law enforcement and military too, the canine dogs, they have saved lives in warfare. So they're especially trained, but they're courageous, they're heroes too. And my horses have been deployed, and they are specially trained in LAPD. At the end of my career, I was fortunate to be given an assignment where, as the officer in charge, to work with volunteer horse and riders, develop them and train them to work together in a partnership with LAPD to deploy in the field, and it's a manner of public outreach with the community members. My horse the unit horses, they're trained to be desensitized to the lights and siren, to the helicopters, to the chaos, and to allow a little 3 or 4 year old to touch a 1,200-pound horse that's bending over and allowing them to interact. There's children, and we've been to Watts and South Centro, the projects in Pacoima. in poverty areas, and these children don't have a lot. And most of these children have never touched a horse in their life. And the book shows, little children reaching up in a safe environment, interacting with the horse. These children would never have that opportunity, and they will remember it the rest of their lives.
Absolutely.
There's one little boy that was in South Central Watts, Christmas time. It's a toy giveaway. That little boy did not leave my pony, Lacey, wrapped his arms around her, and for 2 hours he stayed with her, and you could see in his face that it touched his heart.
Yeah, sure.
And then finally I said, Lacey's tired, she has to go back home. He walked with me. I'm like, does your mother know where you are? Right. But he walked with Lacey to the trailer. I've got that picture is special to me, and that's one that I'll remember forever. That little boy, it did something to his heart to touch her.
Sure. Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Which is extraordinary. You've been doing this for a long time, and obviously it reflects the essence of who you are as a person.
Oh, thank you.
What are some of those blessings and joys that continue to forge you forward in this work?
Well, I enjoy doing the community work still. It's giving back and hopefully making a difference. To me, the book, it's not just a book. It's a testimony of overcoming adversity and trauma in your life and becoming strong and having courage to stand up and to do the right thing. And sometimes, and for the most part, most of the time, doing the right thing is never the right thing to do, right?
Right. What would be some takeaways? If somebody's reading the book, touched by the hand of God, who is the book designed for? Is there a particular person? Is it just for law enforcement and their families? Or can anybody benefit from reading the book?
As we touched on, I have witnessed in person evil. I have seen the monster in the dark. I can attest to the fact that essentially there's good in the world and there's incredible pure evil in the world, the unspeakable evil, heartless monsters. It's horrible. But I hope this it inspires people and gives them hope and faith in their darkest moments of desperation, that there is a higher presence there for them, and that our first responders we need angels watching over us, but we are sent by God, I believe. First responders become the angels that protect and shield the innocent and the vulnerable and those in need.
This has been an extraordinary day, and I tell you, it's obvious that this is a true blessing and joy for you to do this work all these years, and you continue to do it, right? You're retired per se from the force, but you're still heavily involved, aren't you?
It was part of God's plan. And a quick example, right after I wrote the book, I wanted to give back and I wanted others to be inspired with hope and faith. I was at where the picture framing is in Carson City, and there was a person that walked in that had just lost her dog and wanted a photo of it done. This woman didn't know I had been law enforcement and I had written the book, and she was talking about how her cousin died in California and he was a law enforcement officer and he had a canine dog. I think the canine dog was also murdered at the same time, which is heartbreaking. I was touched by that. I didn't say anything about, I'm law enforcement and all this, but I went back with the book signed for the store owner to contact this poor woman that had lost a family member in the line of duty, a fallen hero.
Yeah.
I took the book in, and and that day the store owner called this woman because of the business, the work.
Sure.
It was the anniversary of this officer. When I brought that book in, it was that day that officer had died. It meant so much that I thought about her.
Yeah.
And took the time to give that to her. And that's no coincidence.
Right, exactly.
I didn't know the date. I didn't know the officer's name. I just knew that it was a family member who had lost someone in the line of duty. But I do want to give back this book signed to, I have a website that anyone who has lost a family member in the line of duty this year, I want to send a free signed copy to them because of their sacrifice, their loss.
This has been truly amazing, really, I tell you. Yeah, and thanks for the dinner, the lunch, the cupcakes are absolutely spot on, delicious. And again, to have that opportunity to really meet the horses and meet your dogs and also learn more about you. We've done the radio shows with you too, but you've invited us to come here into your world, into your personal space, into your home, and you've opened up your heart and your home to us. And it's touched me, and I'm sure our viewers watching right now are very touched. So we thank you so very, very much and wish you continued blessing and joy as you still provide such a beautiful, beautiful way to connect with people on a deep level. This has been truly a treat and my pleasure.
This day was incredible. It was amazing to meet our camera person behind the scenes and to meet you, Jim. And the time that you took with the animals and to get to know the story, and you make a difference every day.
What a fantastic experience here in Yerington, Nevada with Patricia Blake, Mocha, the horses, everything that we've had an opportunity to experience here has been extraordinary. 16 acres of pure bliss and a lot of love and a lot of healing as well. And Patty was so open and authentic, sharing her personal story with us and the stories of those that she's helped over the years through her extraordinary work. She gives back. She's been doing it for over 30 years with the Los Angeles Police Force. She's dedicated to helping people. And I tell you, Mocha and all of Mocha's friends do the very, very same. This has been an extraordinary experience here on Close Up Television. I've absolutely loved it. If you'd like to learn more about our very special guest, Patricia Blake, go to her website, warriorsandheroes.com. That's heroes with the E. And you can get the book. You can learn more about all of her extraordinary work and her story. Patricia, thanks for having us come. This was really an incredible experience. Absolutely loved it.
It was a deep pleasure.
It was
Thank
my
you.
privilege as well. And thank you, Mocha.
And by the way, all of my animals loved him. They bonded with him immediately. You'll see in the film.
Oh, yeah. New friends. Thank you, Mocha. You were a star. And thank you for joining us as well in Yerington, Nevada on High Atop Mocha. I'm Jim Masters, Close Up Television and Radio.